Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Senate Education Committee. Will you please rise and put the Pledge of Allegiance? Senator Gendro.
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We're starting this morning with House Bill 1107, and the prime sponsor, Representative Ladd, is here. Welcome. You're going to spend the morning with us.
I'm just barely here.
Well, good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Senate Education Committee. Yes, it's a thrill to be here all day long with you. For the record, my name is Rick Ladd. I'm here to introduce 1107. That's the bill that deals with the public school curriculum frameworks. And I've just passed out to you information regarding what I want to address. And I'm not going to go through and read that. I'm sure you're able to do that as well. But back when I first got into legislature back in 2008, we had curriculum frameworks in law, in statute. I came up with a brilliant idea in 2015 to take them out, which was a dreadful mistake. I've oftentimes gone over to DOE and asked, okay, show me where I can find the academic standards, which we as a legislature are responsible for as far as oversight. And after people looking at it, they say, it's in the curriculum, those standards are in the curriculum frameworks. But I said, we don't have any curriculum frameworks anymore. We're operating on older curriculum frameworks. On the handout that you see there before you, on this back side of the first page, down at the bottom, you can see what we have for curriculum frameworks right now. The social studies curriculum frameworks were written in 2006. The health curriculum frameworks were written in 2003. The science academic standards, the next generation, were adopted in 2017. The Common Core standards for math were adopted when we changed to ESSER and that back about 6 or 7 years ago. The Common Core standards for English language arts, 2010. The K through 12 curriculum framework for the arts, 2001. So our curriculum frameworks have not been really adjusted. And so I've asked where these academic standards are. They say in the curriculum frameworks. You have to hunt for that in the curriculum frameworks. They're immersed in the language. The curriculum frameworks are simply a set of guidelines, so curriculum guidelines containing our academic standards for our school districts to develop their own curriculum because they have the responsibility for doing so. And all the curriculums developed out there in the local school districts have to be aligned with the academic standards. So on the last page I handed you out, you can see that there's a Roman 5 there on that page. That is how the law once read. And we took the curriculum frameworks out. You can see the General Court requires the State Board of Education and the Department of Education to institute procedures for maintaining, updating, improving, and refining curriculum frameworks for each area identified in paragraph 1. That's the substantive criteria for an adequate education. Those areas where we list our subjects there under RSA 193E2A. And they are set there. We have curriculum frameworks simply to provide this guideline for districts. They can set their own scope and sequence of where these skills and knowledge are taught. That's a local decision. And hopefully we align our assessment off of our academic standards and these curriculum frameworks. Oftentimes, we may test for something at one grade level, but a district may not actually teach that at that grade level. They may teach it at a grade level above that. So sometimes our scores are not really reflecting the scope and sequence of how things are taught within the local school district. So we've modified the statutory language again to reflect the need to have these curriculum frameworks. They're very, very important. This cleared the House on the consent calendar. It cleared House Education unanimously. And folks are agreeing this is one step we need to move forward and really start looking at these curriculum frameworks again to assist the local school district. They are only guidelines. We're not writing a statewide curriculum. That's not in the works. It's our responsibility, though, as a legislature to identify where the academic standards are. And I don't know if any of you right now, if I said, go find me the academic standards for X, Y, and Z, I don't think you'd find it. So we need to be more assertive in identifying what are our academic standards, and this is the first step to doing that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions from the committee members? Senator Lang.
So thank you for submitting a bill. Thank you for taking my question. So I agree with you, everything you've said, that the framework's important. My question is, when I look back and I'm like, social studies curriculum framework 2006, and we've passed several bills about civics, and that should impact the social studies framework. And I look back at how long it's been. So should we add to this a timeline? I know, like in rules, we have a 10-year guide that says you have to look at every rule once every 10 years, either re-implement it or change it accordingly. Should we have a standard in here that says that we should have a requirement for a review and updating process of the curriculum?
That's not a bad idea, Representative Lang. The statute, if you look at 193E right now, nobody can change any of the criteria for an adequate education after it was instituted. You can look in every 10 years, they have to be reviewed. That criteria has to be reviewed and approved by the general court. That leads into another bill I have coming forward with the minimum standards for public school approval. But I agree. We need to better define in the area of social studies. Civics had to be added into the curriculum by way of what you said. And of course, we have a special commission under the leadership of Ovid LaMontagne. I'm on that group looking at civics. What is civics? How do we teach civics? It deals with that $1 million textbook we've been talking about. But it goes much, much farther than that. The area of social studies, we had to break out and really identify those subject areas. But if you look at where the state assess for knowledge in these areas, there is really nothing there for where we assess other than civics. And with the immigration assessment, that which we have those 100+ questions, you get a 70 on it, you pass. But that's not really an assessment of the whole gamut from geography to history to economics to all the areas within social studies. So I would concur, we need to get on this. But to back that up, the staffing over at DOE right now, I've asked for years, what are your priorities? And the priorities from the field are, help us out with curriculum, help us out in this area of, what we're supposed to teach. Yes, we approve it at the local level, but we need to be also assessing these subject areas, which we're not doing a good job of. And so that leaves a measure of accountability, which we have to improve. So having a time frame, I'm not opposed to that. It's not a brilliant idea, but it's a great idea.
I'm not as brilliant as you are, obviously, but again, so my concern, I just use civics as an example because we changed the law and it doesn't look like the curriculum's been changed to reflect that, at least according to this framework conversation. But we also have the same problem with health and some of these frameworks go back over 2 decades and they haven't been updated. And so my question is, should we put in here that GOE has a requirement to review curriculum frameworks once every 10 years and either reapprove or institute changes?
I would agree, but remember 80% of the labor over at DOE are paid through federal monies. And when we've asked for curriculum support over there, like reading coordinators and folks in the area of curriculum, we haven't been so supportive of that. We need to be more so. So we can do exactly what you're saying. Health, emotional, social, physical health. When we looked at the bills dealing with mental health this year, we went back to those frameworks and we saw materials which were written that many years ago. Certainly our societal needs are changing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Senator Fenton.
Senator Lang stole my thunder. The same question. You know, so I guess my question is also, you know, I think we should be looking at this, and since there is no timeline, you know, let's really, you know, they're not going to necessarily do it if there's no timeline per se. And also the old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But in terms of, you know, this assessment, would it be worthwhile saying, like, if the school falls below the assessment from the minimum standards, they are required to go back and fix their curriculum, something like that potentially?
Yeah, because curriculum and instruction are a local concern, a local responsibility. I feel our accountability, we need to really support that. How we do it, it's a very complex issue. I think we need to really delve into that. Certainly, I can't imagine that school districts are not trying to do that now. I know they are trying to do that in terms of mathematics, where we have, you know, our proficiency level is not where we want it, nor is it there with reading either. So they're conscious of what we have to do, but you're seeing more and more bills coming forward dealing with things like literacy, mathematics. So I concur. I think this is an area that we have to look at. Yes, I support what you're saying.
I'll just follow up with a statement. Social studies curriculum frameworks in 2006. I was a senior in high school in 2006. So a lot has changed since then, I would say.
Yep.
Any other questions from the committee members? Thank you very much.
That made me feel old.
Not my intent.
In 2006, I was retired. Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
So we
Senator.
can go right into the next one.
We can do that?
Well, you had until
I
9:10.
don't know if there's other
and
people
it's
here.
almost 9:15. So the hearing on 1167 is done, and we can go over to 1161. And the prime sponsor is Representative Ladd.
Well, thank you again, Chairman and members of the Senate Ed Committee. For the record, my name is Rick Ladd. I'm here to introduce 1161. And this needs to be really cleared up and understood what we're doing here. The bill was introduced dealing with eliminating the area where we're talking about energy efficient school buses. I'm chair of the Public School Infrastructure Commission, which deals with folks from Homeland Security, the director there, and Department of Education, and a number of other people from the Senate, the Education, and elsewhere. And when we discussed that bill as introduced, folks were saying, wait a minute, you're eliminating school buses as part of energy efficient school buses, part of our infrastructure. But we support the idea of changing it and taking the words energy efficient out and leaving school buses, all school buses, because we put cameras on these buses. That's part of the security, access, and all that. We need to have infrastructure support on those buses. And so the whole direction and intent of that bill flipped to support all buses, just not energy efficient buses, but all buses. And this was brought up by Representative Heath when she's also on the committee. She said basically, Rick, we need to change this around, so we're going to support all. And then people from Homeland Security jived in and said, yes, we want all our buses to be safe. And so the public school infrastructure, and there is a paperwork that I have here I will also pass out to you. And the Public School Infrastructure Commission went into effect in 2018 per a order from Governor Sununu. And we were reflecting on what's going on in our country, and it was set up with the primary mission initially of access, control, communications with emergency responders, but it also allowed for upgrades to infrastructure of buildings if the governor saw that necessary. It also had at that time a match of money for E-rate, that's the communications. Well, since that grant, federal grant, has disappeared, and the commission has met numerous times, and right now our priorities are on access, responding to issues such as this, communications with emergency responders, ensuring that all our structures, we've spent over $50 million towards infrastructure, public school infrastructure in this state. We're spending more per capita on infrastructure, safety and security and access than most states in this country, and we should be proud of that. But we're not there. We had applications that came in this year, and we still have not been able to respond to all those needs within our schools. We're getting there. What we have done, I don't want to speak too much into the weeds on this, seeing that when we address these applications, we have to go into closed session. We're talking about security needs, and advised by Homeland Security, don't go any farther than that. So this bill changes around, so we're recognizing we do have needs on our buses. That's part of the rolling stock, that's infrastructure, moving to pick kids up. We want all buses to be safe and secure. So we took out the energy efficient, put back in all buses, and that's where we stand right now.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none? Thank you very much for this one. Any questions from the audience? Seeing none. We have a 2-minute respite. Okay, we're opening up the hearing on House Bill 1163. And Representative Ladd is the prime sponsor.
Thank you very much. For the record, my name is Rick Ladd. I come from Haverhill, New Hampshire, and I'm here today to introduce HB 1163, a bill that places the minimum standards for public school approval, aligns those with the responsibility of the Legislative Oversight Commission. And I'd like to address why this bill is coming forward. The bill requires, the sheet that I've just handed out, requires the Legislative Oversight Committee to review and make recommendations regarding to minimum standards for public school approval under consideration by the State Board of Education. currently, the state board has responsibility for approving academic standards and minimum standards for public school approval. That's in law. The Legislative Oversight Committee, Study Committee, which we have, which is made up of senators and representatives, has the responsibility for reviewing and recommending regarding the academic standards, but not the minimum standards for public school approval. And recently, we've gone through the business in the last year and a half of looking at upgrading, changing, as we're responsible for doing every 10 years, the state board is, the rules, ED 306 rules. And it's caused a stir throughout the state. The bill expands legislative oversight to include the minimum standards of public school approval. And looking at the number 5 bullet that I have there, the minimum standards of public school approval for the areas identified in paragraph 1, that is those substantive areas criteria, shall constitute the opportunity for delivery of an adequate education. And then it goes on, changes made by the Board of Education to the school approval standards through rulemaking after the effective date of this section shall not be included within the standards that constitute the opportunity for a delivery of an adequate education without prior adoption by the general court. Academic standards for learning areas identified in RSA 193E2A are found in curriculum frameworks, that's 1107, which we're talking about, which have been to date approved by the state board. So what we have is we have a section within the 306 rules, which definitely deal with the elements that are part of the criteria for a substantive education, those 13 areas. And in the 306 rules, when you look at the rules 306.39 going right through the 40s, you can see that it deals with subjects like, or areas like programs like career technical education, mathematics, reading, health. All those areas are there. However, the Legislative Oversight Committee has no oversight over this at all when those are changed by the state board. This bill recommends that the Oversight Committee also have the same responsibility that it has for academic standards over the minimum standards for public school approval to review and recommend, seeing we're dealing with these areas that are directly responsible with academic standards. They sort of mesh together. And so with that, Administrative Rule ED 306 does reference these programs and academic standards. It is important that legislative oversight have responsibility for review and to make recommendations regarding rulemaking that includes academic standards found in the RSAs. And just recently, the Speaker of the House has asked each of our committees within the House to be cognizant of rule changes which are going to be coming before JELCAR. And we're responsible having a subcommittee within each committee looking at rules. In the next several weeks, I will be conducting a subcommittee meeting. It's bipartisan, equal number of Democrats, equal number of Republicans, looking at rule changes which are coming through regarding 306. And that's needed, seeing that we're looking at areas specifically that are also underneath the substantive criteria for an adequate education. So this is an oversight bill which we're looking at, and we're trying to do the same thing for the minimum standards as we do presently for the academic standards. And I'll stop right there, and if there's any questions, I'll be pleased to take them.
Questions? Questions from the committee? Seeing none. Does the DOE have anything to add? Okay. We don't have any questions on that one.
You ready for the next one?
So that closes the hearing on 1163. And we'll wait until 9:30 for the next bill.
Next one's the credentialing. Is that the one?
Pardon?
1164, is that the next one you have in the
Yeah.
docket? Okay.
Nobody wants to speak today.
House bills. We have 20 more, you think, coming? I can, you're still here, I can do it.
We will continue with the hearings, and now we're going to listen to House Bill 1164, the prime sponsor, Representative Ladd. Welcome.
Thank you again, Senator and members of the Education Committee. For the record, my name is Rick Ladd. I'm here today to introduce 1164. This is relative to criminal records checks of teachers credentialing, teacher credentialing applicants. And it was brought to our attention by Director Steve Appleby over at the Department of Education. And he's also takes care of higher education as well. 1164 is needed. if you're a young student going on to UNH or Plymouth State or to Keene and majoring in education, want to become a teacher, when you enter that program, the Department of Education at those schools requires you to seek credentialing. You have to go through the criminal background check to ensure that you're suitable to become a teacher in the classroom. So they do that as a freshman, but that certification is good only for 3 years. Then it comes time for, and it costs $140, roughly $140 to get this done. There's a fee that the state has, the DOE is around $50. The rest of that goes to the credentialing aspects of this. But the higher education programs, in order for you to get into student teaching, require you to have that criminal background check and certification. However, your 3-year has expired as a senior when you're going out to do it. So they have to go for another criminal background check. We've been advised by the department, instead of making this initially a 3-year length duration, extend it to 4. So these students who are in the Department of Education, they have it done in a freshman. It's good through the time that they're a senior doing their student teaching experience. They will have to have another criminal background check when they go into the business and get their job, full-time job later on. But we see that this is really a benefit and will help those students, especially those which don't have the $140. And for many students, that's big money. And so that's basically what this does. We understand, and there are a number of areas within this teacher credentialing and licensure and all that, which do need a good look at. We have a number of paras which are working within schools that are credentialed, but then also want to get their credential as a teacher. And they've done the criminal background check as the para maybe the year before. Do they have to get it again when they're going to get licensed as a full-time teacher? That's an area that you might want to look at too, if there's something you with the department, if there's something that needs to be added to this. But definitely need to move from the 3-year to the 4-year for those that are initially seeking this certification. And that's what this is all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from this committee members? Senator Lang.
So again, I agree with you. I got contacted by a para in my district who said they were going from para 1 to para 2 and they had to go through an entire new process all over again,
Yeah.
even though they had just gotten certified a year and a half ago or a year ago prior, as they entered in and decided they got new classes and wanted to upgrade, and they had to go pay for a new criminal background check, even though they weren't really changing jobs, they're just changing their credentialing. And so you'd be open to us expanding
Yes,
this
I-
possibly to include, especially
Senator,
dealing with
absolutely.
paras who tend to be the lower paid
Yeah.
people in our
Absolutely.
communities.
As I was driving yesterday from Hanover up to Bradford, Vermont on I-91, I had a long conversation with Brian Hawkins and about the paras. And, and we agree we need to do something about. So this is another area that I say you might want to amend or tack on to this thing to address a real problem we have.
I'm looking in the back of the room to the Department of Education to say we'd like to see language for that, where we need to make a change for, or at least I would like to see language. What statute would we have to change to allow a similar process where a para who's already had a criminal background check, it's good for long enough. So if they want to upgrade, they don't have to repay for a background check they just had. Thank you.
Steve Appleby, the person to work with on that one. He's in charge of that whole program.
Senator Fenton.
More of a statement, Representative. No, I appreciate this bill. I think you and I talked about it a lot when we were on the Teacher Shortage Commission, that this was a problem. So I'm glad to see this coming out of that and you doing something with it. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Questions from the audience? Seeing none, this ends the hearing on 1164.
Okay, she can.
open up the hearing on House Bill 1165, and the prime sponsor, Representative Ladd, is here.
Senators, thank you very much, Senator Ward and members of the Senate Education Committee. I'm here today to introduce HB 1165. 1165 is a bill dealing with school building aid and uses and administration of those monies and rulemaking. It's a kind of a conglomeration of many aspects. And I'd like to address what I'm going to speak to on the second page. There's a, rather than going through the first page there, on the second page, it's testimony I gave to the House Education Committee back in January 16th, 2024. So you can see this was one of the first bills that we did address this session. And it's a request of the Department of Education, clearly a request from them. What this bill does, it addresses some areas where we, for example, the third bullet down reference rulemaking for both school building aid and public school infrastructure funds. And you can see the areas within that we are looking for some rulemaking authority in order to clean up areas which the department has seen that need that done. School building aid grants, amount of the grants, amount of the grants in terms of what we did with the public school infrastructure monies. We capped everything at $100,000. There's an issue that we had that we wanted that being consistent throughout, and we've been doing that, but we'd like to have that in rulemaking. As of January 1, 2025, to be considered for a grant, completed application must be submitted by April 1 of the fiscal year preceding the fiscal year in which the district seeks district legislative body for approval. So right now, the way applications are set in for this app, the up to $50 million for school building aid, it's a very constricted period of time. You get in by July 1, and by January 15th, all the districts are notified that they have or have not received these funds. Doesn't give the school building authority time to review. It doesn't give enough time for warrant articles to be put together in the town reports. And so we're looking to expand the application period of time. It addresses lease space, which we do provide funds to, and it says 30% of the cost of the lease or not to exceed $50,000. It looks at eligible costs in terms of public school infrastructure, alternative granting, and more. It directs the state board to adopt rules relative to the maximum usable size for land purchases and take into account type and size of school. It doesn't say you can't go beyond, but this is what we as a state are going to pay for. And based upon minimum size appropriation for the construction. One of the bullets down the base there, all school building aid grants shall be deposited by the DOE into an established school district expendable trust. In other words, monies can't be commingled. You receive these dollars for construction, you're not going to commingle with everything else in your operating budget. We want it into a separate fund. Project manager, as currently in law, is replaced by owner's representative. And that's important that, and this is a technical term used by the business industry, construction industry. We want that clerk of the works type person representing the owner, not the subcontractor or the contractor. I've done a lot of school building when I was up in Alaska, and I had like 18 change orders coming in within a period of a month. And they were all put forth by a subcontractor who was going to be the contractor to do the job. And they're saying, you need to do this. We want it overseen by the owner's representative, so we're not having projects come forward that aren't really needed, or it's a misuse of funds. The Public School Infrastructure Fund, funds already approved by the biennial general court appropriation. When we approve these monies, which we approved last year at $10 million for public school infrastructure, there were some gopher monies added in as well. But those monies have already been approved. There's no need for us to have to go back to fiscal to get those reapproved when the recommendations coming from Homeland Security and DOE and the money is available. What we're doing, excuse me, is that in the summertime, when we have to wait and go through all those hoops of bringing it back to fiscal, then the governor and council, and it's already been approved in our appropriation, we're wasting a good month, month and a half of building construction time. And the costs of doing business are ever increasing. When we were going through COVID, you couldn't find a contractor that was going to say, this project's going to cost $1 million. And by the time we allocated money, the project already been increased to $1.5 million. Excuse me. And so what we have here is, it's a cleanup bill. Also, there is a annual report due on June 30th, the annual report for the public school infrastructure. And let me turn that thing off. They want to know where I am. And another change which is occurring is that when we give the applications out and we allocate out, let's say $10 million, which we've just recently done, within law now, the Public School Infrastructure Committee is required to meet every month. There's no need to meet where we have a due date that's coming back three months later. We're just meeting to meet. So we're trying to, change that. So it's when the commission's required to meet, the chair, myself will call that meeting and we will meet. There's an investigation of air quality that's also on this. So it has a mixture of school building aid, public school infrastructure, and air quality within schools. Currently, the school principal or designee annually investigates air quality within his or her facility and reports findings to DOE. We also are looking at legislations coming forward with allocating funds to have this done by a contracted service. Obviously, the principal's not trained to know how the HVAC system necessarily works. The principal doesn't know what's behind that wall. He doesn't have the expertise to say there's asbestos behind that wall. And so we're looking at having this done by experts, not by the building principal. Survey reports remain on file for 5 years. When the surveys come in from the schools, we have this information. And the bill initially came down and said DOE shall ensure good air quality practices. Well, we're encouraging it right now. To ensure means we have to go out, and that will be probably something that comes down the road here, but we're not prepared to put that language in legislation right now. It's premature. We want to encourage good air control. When we get out and do these surveys of the buildings, which hopefully will occur, we'll know which buildings are sadly in shape and need some support. That concludes, this is really a bill which is needed for technical support from the department, and as a request of the department, has their full support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions from the committee members? Nothing? No questions? Anybody in the audience who has a question? Seeing none, this concludes the hearing on 1165.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you.
Oops, excuse me.
This concludes the hearing on the House bills that we had this morning. We're going to go into executive.